God. So, whew. These virus/allergies, I guess, if you want to characterize it like that, are really intense. Yeah, like last night, whew, I was blowing my nose, coughing, even this morning, blowing my nose. So I feel like actually I'm building up my stomach muscles. And so, and it's an open system, which means that I'm not going to be stuffed up and collect microbes and mucus and then have that turn against me later. So I'm glad that I'm dealing with whatever's coming through. And so I was doing a bunch of research, of course, and we've been talking about the Freemasons and the Catholic Church and all of that. And then we hear about the Illuminati, which is the same thing. And then I figured out that the Rosicrucians are a compilation of several different but the same breaths. And that is like an area of study. It is a culture, okay? But they're not that different. But then they would call themselves different, but not really. And I realized that, I was raised in a Rosicrucian household. It explained all the different gargoyles and all the different paintings. And it explained then, the academic background, and it also explained the religion. Okay, so when I studied what Rosicrucian is, it's Hermeticism, which is medicine, using Greek mythology, Hermes, who is the messenger god, the herald of orators and travelers and thieves. And Hermeticism sounds like medicine. And then what is mRNA? It's messenger RNA. It sends messages to the different parts of the body to tell it what to do and when and why and all that. And so then you see what culture is, okay? I mean, a culture is the growing of microorganisms. And excuse me, but I'm just blowing out crap, but I've been wanting to talk about this. The growing of microorganisms, tissue, cells, or other living matter in a specialty prepared nutrient medium, such a growth or colony as of bacteria. And so then you take that little culture that's in your petri dish, and then you go and display it out there in the community. Now you have obviously different cultures, like ethnicity, you have religions, you have politics, you have your scientific cultures, and that translates into different languages. And so while 5,000, 6,000 years ago, somebody divided us all and created language and dialects and cultures and ethnicities, now the New World Order is like, okay, well, China had a bunch of warring dynasties, always at war with each other, and they eventually assimilated to each other. They eventually went under one communist rule. And here in America, we're like, oh, that's so horrible, da, 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 da. But that's exactly what's going on right now, but with the world, not just America. America is just one part of everything else that's going on. Now the whole world's going to be under one type of community rule. I don't even want to say communist because there's a whole backstory with that, and baggage. I would say doggy bag, but there's a lot of baggage when you say the word communist. And so really we're trying to develop a community in this world, and there's old religions that are being infused, because how did the Aztecs and the Incas and all the old cultures, even the Danish and all the different agricultural civilizations in the beginning, how do they keep the population down? Well, they did so much human sacrifice, because humans will breed like that. I mean, you see how fast rats can get out of control if they're not being managed by some predator. If you didn't have cats, you would have a lot of rats, right? And if you have a lot of cats, then what else is going to have mankind or the elements to keep the cat population down? I mean, how does each population get controlled by another? And so what is humans? Who is our our controller, and that's the viruses. That's each other. We keep each other under control. Sometimes we allow each other to get out of control, and then it becomes a problem, and then somebody has to go in and be like, okay, we got to go and do something before the humans like completely just ravage the planet. And so I was watching a movie about the mass graves in Canada, in the Lakota Indians. And I know the Indians got a really bad rap well, not a bad rap, but they got the short end of the stick when it came to the Spanish coming in and taking over. Like somebody coming into your house and just taking your house, right? You're just like, dude, whatever. Sometimes it's worth it to fight for your house, but sometimes it's not. And so you just have to leave and just let things be. But the poor Indians were really used as an experiment, I'm sure, even in the 1800s, 1900s, because they're trying to get everybody to assimilate. There's so many different cultures with so many different languages and belief systems. And yeah, I think it's great. That's why we have the rainbow flag called diversity. Diversity means not only just sexual orientation, it also means culturally diverse. It means, yeah, language diverse, but there still has to be a common language, a universal language. And yeah, you can say the internet. And that really is, that's why now it's like borderless, and now everything is virtual, because when someone speaks Spanish online, then you can go and do a Google Translate, and you can talk to someone that's over there in Spain or over there in Mexico, and you're here in America, and you don't even have to just like physically stand in the presence of each other trying to communicate when there's a language barrier. So what is the internet? It breaks down the walls. You can still keep your culture. That's great. Fine. But you got to be computer literate so you can be able to do commerce and then be edified to new ideas. And so, yeah, and there's also a lot of human sacrifice going on. Why are women and children sacrificed? Because the women in our society bear the babies, and the children are then the new cultures. And some children don't get edified to the new culture because the parents have their own barriers to assimilating. And so what happened in Texas and all the controversy around that, why those officers were standing down, you already know what I think, and I'm sure if you actually saw the timeline of events, you'd probably figure it out yourself what's going on here, but there's nothing you can do. Nowadays, you really have to be careful of where you send your young children, because that's kind of, and it's always been, the children and the women have been the target in so many different ways. Yes, we want to bring women up, and we're seeing that, and bringing the minorities up to a certain level to then be able to compete on a level playing field. But where do the problems and the amazing things happen? It happens in the home. And if people aren't assimilating to the overall environment, and there's so much of their old culture stuck in them, and they're not looking to assimilate, you got to look at the way the Freemasons are looking at stuff. I mean, who are people that can be sacrificed? Those that might seem like they're not assimilating, that they're still keeping to their culture. And you'll find it'll be in the poor populations. I'm sorry, but that's kind of how this shit works. So there's even a major hierarchy in America. You have your waspy communities and your country clubs, and will you find somebody like what happened yesterday, go into a country club, into a higher socioeconomic? No, not really, because mostly the higher socioeconomic areas are developing the movers and the shakers and the maintainers of our infrastructure. It's going to be the poor areas, and they've always been under that kind of scrutiny and subject to a lot of violence, because it's like you either pull yourself out of poverty and find a way to rise above, or you're going to be subject to somebody else's intentions. But that's like anything, if you're not going to think for yourself, and you're going to be, I don't know, just dependent, it's just, so, I mean, I'm making assumptions of what's going on, but the patterns are there. Will anyone ever say, actually, they are emulating what was going on back in the 5,000 years ago? No, because that would be too, that would be too just in your face, and that would be like crimes against humanity. And so how do you not have the UN or anyone else come in and say, that's illegal. You can't do that kind of gene aside. And so then we have people being programmed to go off the deep end in some way. And it could be organic. It could be that, yeah, the programming has caused people to go a little cuckoo and are focused on violence and yeah, guns. And why do we need guns? Because we need protection from each other. It's not really about the government. I know we hear about, what happened in World War II and in China and Cultural Revolution and all that, and the government was coming down on the people. But there was a reason why, the Cultural Revolution was about assimilation. It was about that there's one community rule, and people were resisting. And so I guess what else does the government do if you're not going to assimilate? Well, we got to force you to assimilate because some people are very resistant in change, and there's got to be change. And so that's what then prompts all the genocide, is that an invading force, whether it's justified or not, comes in and says, okay, we want you to now adopt our culture. And we don't want you to say anything about your culture. And that that's like me saying, hey, you got to now let go of your religion. I'm doing the same thing as Christopher Columbus is doing to some of my Jilly Juice crowd who have a culture. But then I see the barrier. I recognize what I'm doing when I'm watching these videos. I'm like, holy shit, I sound like Christopher Columbus. You got to give up your religion. You got to give up your culture. You got to give up this. Now, that's obviously very extreme. What I'm actually trying to say is, can you speak both the Jilly Juice way, which is understanding everything, and speak in the scientific way, speak in a logical and articulate, speak in allegory that's aside from the Bible scriptures? Can you use other texts and other mediums and other belief systems, well, other ways of saying things? Because there's a million ways to say the same thing. If you're only taking one out of a million ways to say the same thing, then what it is you're creating barriers, and then it turns people off because there's always baggage behind that one way of saying things, and that could be some specific religion. And that's the thing with the Rosicrucians, is that they are a compilation of Jewish mysticism, Christian Gnosticism, which is about the Father and the Son and all that, and then Hermeticism. Okay, and so the Jewish mysticism is like the Kabbalah, and the Jewish or the Christian Gnosticism is about the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit or something like that. And then you have the Hermeticism, which is medicine, Hermes, the messenger, and all of that. And so even though they are relatively distinct, there's still a common ground between all three of them. And there's so many offshoots, because you see the Christian Scientists, the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Mormons, and they're all derived from Jesus Christ. They're all derived from the center point, which is before Christ or after Christ. And so then I'm like, okay, so now, am I saying anything different, that you should not speak like your scripture? You should speak science? Well, if you are all into the scripture, then maybe it's time to learn how to speak the science way. Because you've already know the scripture, you can roll it off your tongue. It's like the back of your hand. You know exactly every single word and what it means. And so now learn something different. Learn to say the same thing in a different way. That's really what I'm asking all of my Jilly Juice crowd that are in very specific tunneled cultures, whether it's the Vietnamese culture, the art culture, the Jehovah's Witness, born again Christian, Jewish, whatever, Hollywood, is that can you speak in a different way? Can you say the same thing, because it's all the same shit, in a different way with a predictable result, that you feel the viruses, you blow your nose, you're not trying to be cured, and you're breaking down the barriers between your religion, your politics, and your science, and you're willing to speak to somebody else that's listening. And that means that you're willing to understand what somebody else is going through, and you can speak to that and still keep your culture, but then you have tolerance that you have taken the time to understand somebody else's culture. And that is not happening in a lot of the politics, in a lot of the religions, in a lot of the science world. That's why I'm so pissy at science, like IFL science, because they always say one side of the equation. They don't offer the other side. And I'm saying, they're like, well, you can't argue with science. Yes, you can if you're not providing the other argument. And then no one ever says anything when I say this, because they know it's true. They're biased. I even went into the simulation group, and somebody was saying, oh yeah, woman came first and then man. And I'm just like, how do you know if it's the X came first or the Y came first? How do you know that the Y actually supposed to be the Y first, and then they added the little leg on the X? And the guy was like, no, because science said that it was the X first and then the Y. And I'm like, science is fucking biased. He's like, no, you're biased. No, I'm not. I'm just giving the other side. Who says that it is the woman first? It could be the man. We don't. I said, you will never know if it's the man came first or the woman came first. You'll never fucking know. And he was just so like, oh my, he couldn't really wrap his mind around that science can also be biased. And so we have, been programmed like layer by layer by layer by layer. And then when we have so many people in the population who are not assimilating, who are putting down barrier after barrier after barrier, and then it's always a fight between, the red and the blue and the north and the south, the east and the west, and then also microbially, the New World Order or the government and all the people that are in authority are getting tired of it. And so what happened yesterday in Texas was, well, you know where that goes. We know what happened in the Aztecs and the Incas, and we know what they were doing to appease the gods because there were so many people. And so if you want to save your kids, you got to be, there's no way to know, and you'll never know when things pop up. That's the scary thing about it. You can kind of predict, and people have speculated why things happen in certain places, but things happen. Look at Columbine. Look at different places, Virginia Tech. Someone wrote a list of all the different schools that were under some kind of like gun issue, and some were probably organic. Some kid was just being stupid and or was pissed off at stuff, but you'll never know his background. And then there could be somebody that was groomed to do this. You don't know. And it not even necessarily the government, okay? Let's just take the government out for a minute if you can, and maybe someone who's There's people who practice, who do experiments on their own kids. Some people are having children that you don't know what kids are being groomed for and what kind of issues some of these parents have that are translated down to their kids. And so then it's like anything goes. And then you can infuse something that is like a Manchurian in with an organic population that's already at the surface, highly triggered. And then that will then ensue a chain of events that we're all just running for cover. And so then, you got to realize that there's no place that's safe, per se, not in this really crazy dynamic environment. And they've said it for a lot of years in the conspiracy world that there's going to be some changes. And it's going to be like the zombie apocalypse per the CDC. And the movies have given us the indicators. If you're willing to, not watch the movies stoned or under the influence, that you actually are in presence of mind to watch movie and pick up the indicators and the clues on what your world is about, because art imitates life and life imitates art. And sometimes the artists don't even know that they're imitating life, but some do. Some high level people in Hollywood know exactly what's going on, just like some high level people in academia know what's going on. And then you have people that go to college and pay their money, and they're given only 1/3 of the bigger picture, and so they think they have all the knowledge and then they do their job, but they don't realize there's a bigger picture going on. And that's why they can't wrap their mind around the conspiracy world, because they were told a certain thing for a certain amount of time, but they don't realize it was just for that generation to roll out, to then instill certain things. Like me, look, I don't have a culture per se. Yeah, I'm from Vietnam, but I have no relationship with my culture. But do I need a relationship with my culture? Not necessarily, because it's all horoscopes. It's all superstition. And yeah, my culture wants to make a lot of money. And there's certain behaviors and predilections that certain cultures have. Gambling is a huge thing in the Asian community. When I was in the casinos, when I worked in the casinos in Mississippi, there's a lot of Vietnamese playing pai gow, and I had a lot of I did a lot of gambling too in my youth. I played a lot of blackjack and craps. I love craps. It was such an intense game. The adrenaline rush was amazing, but I lost a lot of money gambling. And I would never do that again. With my husband, we went to a casino one time and I just played $20 and I turned it into $60. And that bought us dinner, and then I stopped. But some people are just like, I'm going to hit it big. I'm going to hit it big. And then instead of going to the casinos, then they're playing the crypto or they're investing in stocks that are really not going to pan out, but they get hyped up. And so sometimes I'm okay with not having like my culture per se. That I can still be like, yeah, I'm from Vietnam, the Vietnam War, but I'm developing my own culture now. And you don't have to do that. You can still keep your culture, but you need to learn how to speak to other cultures and other ways of other different thought processes and still say the same thing, but in a different way. Okay? And so the whole point of the New World Order, the Freemason, the Rosicrucian, and yeah, it's the Illuminati, okay, is that they are trying to now make everybody coexist. And that means microbially, which is why you're seeing a pandemic back to back, because all the microbes from all over the world are converging together, and you're going to have to assimilate to somebody in Africa right here in your little community. Because the microbes, all the therapies are from all over the world. Whether it's an antiviral or whatever, or the actual person. Because remember, when people get exposed to stuff and they don't want to feel the pain, somebody takes an antiviral, it now produces a new viral baby. Like again, plus minus, negative times a positive equals a negative, or entropy. Whew, I always get this mixed up. Entropy and then, fertility. And so we're in a huge fertile petri dish at this point, and it's heating up the atmosphere. When you put so much of a culture together, if you were to be in a lab and you were to take the temperature of all those microorganisms, you'd see it rise as they keep procreating. That's why we're having global warming. That's why they predicted global warming, because as soon as you take all the cultures that are all homogenized in their relative equilibrium, you have relative equilibrium across the land. As soon as you put them all together and their microbes, they start bearing little viral babies. That adds to the heat. That adds to the atmosphere. It's energy. And so global warming is predictable when that kind of reproduction is happening at a relatively, at a certain cadence, since before 2019, but it was steadily rising because of all the flu viruses. Now you take something like COVID-19 that is highly energetic, it's going to raise the temperature of the planet even more and also have everybody hair trigger. And then you're going to see people catalyzing that energy and then using that as a political maneuver. And that's the world that we live in. So what do I say? Stay home, stay safe, stay away from large crowds, and start redirecting your life in a different way, because it's not the same anymore. And yeah, we have so many schools in so many different parts of the country, 130,000 schools. You really think they're going to put an armed guard in every single one of those schools? No. So then, you are gambling every single time you take your kid to school. You don't know where anything is going to pop up. You don't know what's going on in any of these households. That ought to scare the crap out of you. Oh, but why do you want to scare? Because now you got to be aware of the world you live in. It's not unicorns and rainbows. People are hair trigger, and they're opportunistic in trying to create another situation. And so then you really have to watch what you're doing and who you're doing it with. Okay? And so just understand that, everything I'm saying, I can't prove shit. But I also see patterns. Will someone actually tell me their intentions? No. How many people have friends and family and acquaintances and even coworkers and bosses lie to their face? All of you have. And so if your friends and family can lie to your face about or omit the truth, then what makes you think a stranger on the streets can tell you everything they're doing, what they're doing, and why? What makes you think your government's going to tell you everything? That's what you have to understand, is that what happens in your own home can definitely happen out there as far as people's intentions and them divulging what their intentions are. Because let me tell you, conspiracy is not about being open about your stuff. Conspiracy is, you have two friends that don't like this other friend, and they're going to find a way to go and undermine that one friend, and now you have a conspiracy. Well, that ain't any different than what government is doing, trying to control and figure out how to direct populations. Okay? And so now you must be smart about what you're doing. And if you have kids, you have to be especially smart. And if you're not, then fine. I hope you don't become a victim. I really do. But I really don't. But I want you to see what's going on in a bigger picture. And then Freemason Rosicrucian, yeah. I didn't realize. Well, I kind of knew. I kind of knew that was why my mom did like my conspiracy stuff. Because, yeah, Illuminati. And Illuminati is more of like the fantasy side of the Rosicrucians. That's where they can develop another meaning behind the actual meaning. And so you think it's like all satanic and shit. Yeah, I mean, I guess if you look at human sacrifice, it's satanic, but what are you gonna do? You're gonna keep breeding your dog, and they keep having puppies and puppies, and you're like, I'm trying to sell. And people don't want to have puppies anymore because they don't want to keep selling them, right? You don't want your dog to be bred so much. At some point, you gotta either tie the tubes of the dog, or if you don't have enough money to feed, then you try to give them away. But then sometimes, some dogs have to die. That sucks. But people are breeding so many people and so many animals that we can't help but have to destroy them. And they're all like, oh my God, that's so inhumane. Well, then stop fucking breeding and control and take care of the life that you have. Because we have so many kids that are not being edified, and the parents need to finally realize. That's why the police were holding the parents back. Because we need to keep the parents alive, because maybe they have a chance to finally level up, but they probably won't. But the kids have a long way to go to level up. Okay? That's why they kept the parents out. And then, of course, the police saved their own kids. It's sad. That whole situation is so sad. But we're going to see a lot more of it. So, prepare yourself. All right, bye.